Hey everyone. So, you're dreaming of studying in Australia, right? Thinking about your course, the campus, all the amazing stuff. But hold on. Before you get there, there's one really critical hurdle we need to talk about: proving your English language skills for that Subclass 500 visa. And in this explainer, we're going to break it all down for you.
So, is your English ready for Australia? Now, I want you to think of this less as a scary test and more like the very first checkpoint on your big adventure. The Australian government just needs to be sure you can hit the ground running, that you can succeed in your classes and just handle daily life. This is your chance to show them you're ready to go.
All right, we've broken this down into 5 simple parts. First, we'll get our heads around the requirement itself. Then, we'll look at the 2 main ways you can prove your skills. We'll dive deep into both of those paths, and then we'll wrap it all up with a clear action plan to get you moving. Okay, let's get right into it. Proving your English skills? It's not optional. It is a mandatory part of the whole student visa process. And here's something you really need to know. The Department of Home Affairs can ask you for this proof at any point, even if you thought you didn't need to provide it at the start. Being caught unprepared can cause massive delays, so you've got to have your evidence ready to go.
So, before you book a test or do anything else, your very first stop has to be the government's official document checklist tool. Seriously, this is your starting line. It'll tell you exactly what evidence you personally need based on your passport and where you're studying. It just cuts through all the confusion.
So, once you know that you have to provide evidence, you basically come to a fork in the road. There are 2 and only 2 clear paths you can take to prove your English skills, and the choice you make here really defines everything you do next.
And here are those 2 options, side by side. Path 1 is the most common. You take an official, government-approved English test, and you submit your score. Simple. Path 2 is to check if you qualify for an exemption, which could mean, and this is the exciting part, you might not have to take a test at all.
Okay, let's walk down that first path, taking an approved test. This is the route that most of you will probably be taking. So getting the little details right is absolutely crucial. You don't want to get this wrong and cause delays or, even worse, a rejection.
So, the most important rule, and I really can't stress this enough, is that the Department of Home Affairs does not accept any English tests that you take online from home. This is all about security and making sure every test is legit. Submitting one of those at-home tests is pretty much a guaranteed way to get your evidence thrown out and your whole application stalled.
And just to be crystal clear, here are some of the popular online tests that are a definite no-go for your Australian visa. We're talking about things like the IELTS Online, the TOEFL IBT Home Edition, and all the others you see here. The bottom line is, you must take your test in person at an official test center.
Another key detail is how long your test score is good for. Your English test result is generally only valid for 2 years. What that means is you have to have taken that test within the 2 years right before you hit submit on your visa application. So timing is absolutely everything.
And speaking of timing, you've got to watch out for a couple of really specific, kind of tricky date windows. For example, if you took a TOEFL IBT test between late July 2023 and early May 2024, I'm sorry to say, but those scores aren't accepted. And for the Cambridge C1 Advanced test, for a big chunk of 2024 and 2025, only the paper version is going to be valid. You have to check these dates.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about path number 2. This is for those of you who might get to skip the test entirely. So, the big question is, who exactly qualifies for one of these exemptions?
Well, generally you're exempt if you're a citizen and you hold a passport from the UK, the USA, Canada, New Zealand, or Ireland. You might also be exempt if you've done at least 5 years of study in English in one of those countries, or maybe you've recently finished certain Australian high school or certificate courses while you were here on a student visa. Now hold on, there's a really important exception to that passport rule. The government explicitly says that if you hold a British National Overseas or BNO passport, they might still ask you to provide an English test score. This is a crucial detail that BNO passport holders absolutely cannot afford to miss.
But remember this, even if you are exempt, you can't just tick a box and call it a day. That's not how it works. You have to provide the actual documents to prove it. We're talking your passport, your academic transcripts, your school certificates, whatever it takes to back up your claim.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. The main rule, the 2 paths, all those critical little details. So now let's pull it all together into one simple, final action plan to make sure you are on the perfect track for success. Here it is. Step 1, and I'll say it again, always start with that official document checklist tool. Step 2, make your choice.
Are you taking a test or are you claiming an exemption? If it's the test, step 3 is to get online and book an approved in-person test right away. And double-check all those tricky dates we talked about. And if you think you're exempt, then your step 4 is to start getting all of that proof together right now.
Look, meeting this requirement is a non-negotiable part of your application. But with the right info and a clear plan, it's totally a checkpoint you can pass with confidence. So the only real question left is, are you ready to prove it?